Hello to all of you on Radio Land. I'm here at WEHR 100.7 FM, eternalhoperadio.com. Happy to have you here, and I hope you are blessed by today's presentation. Again, my name is Dr. Dawkins, Elder Dawkins from the Macedonia Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're going to continue today with the discussion on creation health. And if you've been following with us, you remember that we started off with C, choice, the first step towards improved health. We then went into rest, that's CR, rest, taking time to relax, taking time to know your maker, taking time to enjoy. Then we went into E, environment, all that surrounds you. That's our topic for today, environment. Our environment has a powerful influence on the mind and body and affects our mood and health. Our goal in this presentation is to make the positive choice of surrounding ourselves with a healthy environment. I know a lot of you have never thought about how environment improves your health. So as we go through this discussion today, I am hoping that you will take notes, and at the end you will see benefits in actually surrounding yourself with positive environment. Your environment is the living space you find yourself in at any given time. It could be your home, office, or even your car. Everything that surrounds you would be considered your environment. Now, how do we process our environment? Well, we go by our senses. What you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, and what you touch. Now, of course, some of this actually overlap. If you think about what you taste, that will also be part of the topic of nutrition. Now, you're going to find out as we go through that many of what is said almost seem like it's common sense. There are studies out there that will, of course, verify what we're going to be talking about. But if you actually stop and think about what you have experienced yourself, you'll find that you yourself are part of what the different studies would have showed. We're dealing now with the environment and our senses. It says all our senses, sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste, brings stimulating input into our minds and body. This input affects us profoundly. All our sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste brings stimulating input into our minds and bodies. And I repeated that just for emphasis. It says, and this is a quote by William H. Stewart, the truly healthful or healthy environment is not merely a safe but stimulating. The truly healthy environment is not merely safe but stimulating. It involves, again, for repetition, sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. Now let's consider sight. Our eyes probably goes further than any other of our senses as far as being able to perceive what is out there. Our eyes see a wealth of information every day. This input is either healthy or unhealthy to our well-being. Again, this is something that I'm sure many people have not really considered. And for that reason, many take it for granted. Things we see that promote well-being are our loved ones and their smiles, family and friends, pictures that rekindle fond memories of special times. Our hearts are also warmed when we see the loving gifts others have given us, or when we see nature through our windows, the sun shining brightly, or the warm glow of a sunrise or sunset. Or perhaps we see the cat or dog or bird that is our pal. We can go outside and be nurtured by nature, or we can bring the natural world into our homes and reap the healing benefits of plants, flowers, and fountains. I know that some of you who are listening actually, again, experience just what is being said here. For myself, I have a fish tank. I wanted to have dogs, cats. I get sentimental, and, these animals, of course, they become like family. And I've seen people, when tragedy happens, it affects them just a bit as if it was their own child or, any family member. But there's a benefit that comes with having pets. It brings a certain amount of calm. It also brings healing. We live in a day and age where you find that pets are sometimes considered service animals. They're there for comfort. Again, that becomes part of your environment. You find that our environment also will determine or cause certain amount of stress in our lives. People have clutters. They hoard things. A cluttering living space harms our well-being because it can elevate blood pressure. It can cause headache, lead to gastrointestinal distress such as irritable bowel syndrome, and cause depression and anxiety. Many times we don't even think of what is actually causing these symptoms, but if you actually stop and look, just the appearance of the environment is being cluttered. By the time you get there, your pressure starts rising. It creates an anxiety when you think of having to clean it up. Organization, cleanliness, and order promote peace, health, decreased waste, and increased energy. Clutter and disorganization, on the other hand, drain energy. Notice how you feel when you walk into a room that is disorganized and cluttered. Then notice how you feel when you enter a room that is neat and clean with inviting items. A good example of this is what Campbell found in his study. The condition of a professor's office determined how welcome and comfortable the students visiting his office felt. According to the result of this study, plants and tidiness made visitors feel the most comfortable. Disorganization creates stress, zaps energy, and wastes time. It can also be a safety hazard because people can trip and fall over things. We're talking about health here. Sometimes just the practical stuff, the common sense stuff, we take for granted. By beholding, we become changed. That's also a statement. There's also a statement that with what we just talked about with cleanliness, it says cleanliness is next to godliness. When you think about Jesus after he was put in the tomb, when Mary went in, it says that his clothes was neatly put together and, placed down. That Jesus is one who promoted cleanliness. When you look at the children of Israel, you find that there were certain laws that included cleanliness. A woman was in her menses, there was a certain amount of time that she would have to stay away. When people were with certain illnesses, leprosy, they had to also stay away. They had to be confined. So you find there's a certain amount of order that God expressed and also was part of the laws that had to be observed by the Jewish economy and the Jewish people at that time. By beholding, we become changed. Take a moment to consider the images that are coming into your amazing brain. Are they positive and health promoting? Think about your environment and the TV programs, videos, video games, magazines, books, and music that you see and hear. Do they inspire and uplift? This is important because the old saying says, by beholding, we become changed. And so if what you're seeing is not elevating, is not lifting you up, then you'll find that there is a problem. Many behavioral and cognitive studies link exposure to violent media and aggressive behavior. There was a study that was done and says that teens who played violent video games showed an increased activity in areas of the brain linked with emotional arousal and decreased responses in regions that govern self-control. I would dare say that many times when you see on the news where young people, youth get into trouble and they do things that are considered not sociable, acceptable, when they go to the process of committing crimes such as murder, many times you'll find that one of the things that is common is games that have a lot of violence in there. And yet still, even though studies show that, of course, it's acceptable and people still continue to play it. You got to remember that the young people's mind are very pliable. And so what they see many times impresses them to act it out. Effect of negative news. Viewing 14 minutes of negative television news increases anxiety and sad mood. That's something, of course, again, that you don't even need the studies, even though the studies do show that. You just ask yourself, especially going through this period where you have all this different unrest and upheaval. We had to deal with COVID, for instance, and mixed messages that was given. Then you find that in today's day and age, violence, when it's committed, it's brought to you, it's harbored on. Nobody speaks about the good things that happen. Nobody speaks about the neighbor that is helping the other neighbor through a tough time. You very rarely see those things as news, but things that are bad is what's brought to our attention. And it doesn't stop folks from being bad. It seems like it inspires them to try to outdo. Catastrophic worries, the filling of your mind with thoughts of great and sudden calamity or disasters brings anxiety. You watch these things and all of a sudden you find you're not able to sleep. I'm not promoting or telling anybody to watch scary movies. I don't myself, but it amazes me to watch a scary movie or even to pass by it. For me, I would lose sleep afterwards. I would be scared, especially when I was young. Positive impact of television. Now, television is something, of course, that you could almost say is ubiquitous. Almost every house has at least one. And if I was to do a survey, you'll find that most likely each house has a multiple. Probably each room has one. But positive impact of television increases or helps educationally, could be entertaining, relaxing, promotes spiritual growth. You can actually choose what you tune into. And if you choose the right thing, if used properly, television is a tool for experiencing positive programming, whether it is educational, entertaining, or spiritual. Problem starts when television is used improperly and consumes too much of our time. There's a negative impact. It influences viewers to regard violence lightly. I'm sure as I'm speaking, those who are older can remember the days when if you heard that somebody was murdered, one person was murdered, it created news. Everybody acted, and it probably would last for a month talking about, can you believe what happened? This happened. Somebody lost their life. Now we live in a society and we are so used to these bad images of murder that we don't even speak about when murders happen anymore. Unless it happens to, of course, somebody who is of importance. But there's so many things that are happening, and because we are so tuned to seeing it on a regular basis, it doesn't move us. It doesn't cause sympathy. You know what? It's not my family member who lost their life in a violent struggle, and so it doesn't even come to mind. If you see loving acts, it tends to bring a certain amount of cheer, calm, smile. When you see animals, like I saw a clip where it was a lion who went and killed the mother of a deer. And it almost like something just turned, and the lion saw that the baby deer was there and decided, you know what, it would care for it. And so it protected the deer. And when you saw it, there was a certain amount of emotion, positive emotion that came upon you. And you're like, wow, look at that, a lion and the deer. Also in our sight, you have different colors in nature. And you find that there are colors that actually can calm you down. Blue, green. Those colors can be relaxing, associated with a lower anxiety score when they did the studies. When you show somebody green, when you show them the beach, the sea, when you show them the sky, to the point where we've seen where many pictures, of course, include scenery of these natural things that are around. It's no wonder why if you get a house on the beach, you find you have to pay a significant premium for it. Why? Because it's common knowledge that if you live on the beach and when you get home from work or whatever it is that you're doing and you can sit down on the porch and look at the beach, there's a certain amount of relaxation, a certain amount of therapy. And it's not just the beach. As I mentioned, beach is seen as blue, the sea. But you could have the same effect if you lived up in the mountains where you have a lot of greenery around you. Sitting out on the patio, looking at the trees that are green, looking at the mountains. And you know what? You may even throw in a couple animals in there, deer running by. Even a bear, as long as it's not coming to you, will create some amount of relaxation for you. This is your environment. The things that we hear also would be considered part of our environment. Sounds of health and healing. Now, what are those sounds? Well, during the time of COVID, there were things that would cause me to smile. Of course, there were times during that period of time when nobody was allowed to leave home except for essential duties. It wasn't as bad in some places as it was in others. There are some countries where you weren't allowed to go outside of the house. But here in Florida, here in places in the United States, what I experienced was a lot of the animals that you would want to say were in hiding or they were invisible in plain sight, that's probably a better way to put it, you actually started to see them. You had cardinals, red cardinals that you hadn't seen in a long time. They would be spotted, and you started to see animals that were in hiding, if you want to say. You started to see them around, and it's almost like a regeneration of the earth and things that we take for granted. And what I notice is that many of these animals have sound that you can distinctively tell or hear. And it was a beauty to hear the birds singing. It brought to you a certain amount of comfort. And so a day spent in nature is a day surrounded by sound if you're actually listening. Now, listening is very interesting, meaning that you could have sound around you and not hear. A good example of that, for instance, is if anybody has a grandfather clock. After that clock has been chirping or dinging, donging for a certain period of time, you find that it's tuned out. You don't even hear it. And so it is with nature. God can be singing, having his animals, and could be having sounds that are helpful, restorative, that's going all around you, but you tune it out. Why? Because your brain is focused on something else. Or live next to a train. Sound can affect our health. Hearing loving words, uplifting music, singing, and the sound of nature are a blessing to the mind, body, and soul. In a hospital where patients were undergoing a flexible bronchoscopy, researchers placed a mural of nature in front of a patient and played nature sounds during the procedure. Those with the sight and sound of nature reported significantly less pain than those without. As I was reading this study, it brought my mind to something personal. I lost my dad during the period of COVID, and while there, going through his last stages, the family was there and they were singing songs, hymns. And I believe those hymns became the opium that prevented him from having to need the morphine or the oxycodone or any of the pain medication or the medications for anxiety. He was hearing music that was heavenly, and so it brought a certain amount of comfort that decreased his need for the artificial comfort. Smell, that's another one of our senses. The things that we smell, rose. There's no wonder coming up at this time you find that, the men who haven't bought rose for their loved ones, currently they're doing it right now because it brings a certain amount of blessings. The brain processes all of what the environment gives through the senses, and smell is just as important. There's a whole series of treatment, aromatherapy. You find that if you bring nature indoors, it's like bringing a treatment that, again, you would consider, or it's named aromatherapy. Green and flowering plants remove toxic chemicals. That's something that many people don't realize. 1 6-inch plant per 100 square feet of the interior is recommended by NASA. NASA did a research and says that green and flowering plants remove several toxic chemicals from the air in building interiors. Placing these plants in your home or office improves air quality, making it more pleasant to live and to work. The recommendation is, again, a 1 6-inch plant per 100 square feet of interior. If you actually check the EPA and start to look at what is it that we live in, the air, it says America spends about 90% of their time indoors. The air inside most homes is an average of 2 to 5 times more polluted than the air outside its walls. In fact, it's one of the top 5 environmental risks for public health. Now, in medicine, we realize that at times the air is so toxic and there are things going on that it causes direct harm. I'll take, for instance, asbestosis. Past walls would be made with this chemical that eventually causes COPD, cause cancer. You also realize that there are certain fumes that building material will emit. Some time ago, probably about 20 years ago, I remember there was a problem with drywall, Chinese drywall. Not only was this toxic to the person who was inhabiting the place that they were using that material, but also you find that even the other building material, wires, electrical wires and sockets were affected. Can you imagine what that was doing to you as a person if the result to those material were so affected? And I would say that it wasn't even the fact that the materials were affected, that you were affected, I should say. that caused the change. It was probably just a financial thing with the material, why it had to be taken off and corrective measures had to be done. So you find that different chemicals, poisons if you want to say, are all around us. Household cleaners, pesticides, foams, furnaces. Sometimes we don't even realize that. I know because it's cold, we have to put on the furnace and the fire, but that's toxic. Eventually it affects the lungs. People get asthma. Composite wood products. We talked about that. Carpets, gas ranges, garbage can, and personal care items. Personal care items, some of us don't even realize the amount of toxins that is being used to create these products. And of course, they're right there. We inhale it. Personal care items could be thought of as things that we use in the hair, chemicals that we use on our nails. And if it's not the nail polish itself, it's the cleaners that we use to get the nail polish off. And so that's important. Not only does it help if it's positive, but it can be detrimental if the wrong things are brought in and we are ingesting it through our sense of smell. There are certain plants that when you research are very good. According to NASA, the following 10 plants are the top picks for removing formaldehyde, which is found in virtually all indoor environment. Some of these plants, a bamboo plant, the Chinese evergreen, English ivy, mother-in-law's tongue, pot mum, and you can probably Google it and it would give you other plants that will do the same thing. Choosing healthier alternatives. Avoid toxic chemicals. Now that's something that you can do. Look up and see what is involved, what is contained in these products, and make a decision that as much as possible you will look for products that list all their ingredients and that most of the ingredients are natural, things that God made. Basic household cleaners recipes found. You can Google www.eartheasy.com. Choose more eco-friendly products, fresh air, and keep a relative humidity of 40 to 60%. Then you have touch, another one of the senses. Touch is, of course, something that you feel usually on the outer core of the body, the skin. The skin is the largest organ of our body. We are created to touch and to be touched. Created to touch and to be touched. Most have touched to develop and grow. We must have it to develop and to grow. Hugging husbands, it says, live longer with fewer heart problems. Now, I'm happy this is coming up at this time, right close to the time when you find that, lovers, husbands, and wives will get together. So here is something positive. Hugging husbands live longer with fewer heart problems. Holding the hand of your spouse decreases feelings of unpleasantness. Very simple. 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth. Now, even if that's not supported by research, trust me, try it. It will be beneficial and it will make you feel, and the person you're doing it to, feel good. Tastes, textures, and colors. Eating was meant to energize us, and we're going to spend a whole time on nutrition. But eating was meant to energize us. That's the nutrient, that's the gas that we have for our body. It gives vitality and health. Be a daily pleasure. One of the last things to go is eating. As a physician, I can tell you that when people suffers from dementia, Alzheimer's disease, it reaches a point where many of the things that they're used to doing, of course, they stop doing. One of the things I've realized from experience, personally and also from the patients that I deal with, is the last sense to go is usually that of taste. Anytime somebody reach a point where they do not want to eat and they don't remember to eat, I can tell that they're on their last leg. If everything else is going and they just have no desire to eat, of course, that will tell you, of course, that the person is dying, because we need food to sustain us. And so one of the first things that a child has when they're born is that of eating. You just put the child near to the mom's breast and you find it latches on and knows exactly what to do without you having to tell it. And one of the last things to go is that of having the desire to eat. And so taste is good. So, when you make your food, you make it so it's palatable. And there's benefits to that. Benefits to organic food. No hazard residue to ingest. No hazardous material put into the environment, of course, where the food is being grown or utilized for the process of presenting it to the market to be eaten. More nutritious than conventional food. These are some of the benefits of organic food. It's very interesting, and we'll spend some time on that. That we do a lot of things to manipulate the food and then put a premium on it, when if you had left it alone, it wouldn't have cost you all the things. What do I mean by that? How to better explain that? It's like rice. We spend time to take the rice as it comes out naturally brown, take out the germ, there the most of the nutrients is, and we basically just give you carbs. It's basically an empty carbohydrate. And sometimes we feel sorry and we may throw some vitamins and some stuff inside and say, okay, we have just given you some added products to the rice and we have fortified it. Well, if they had just left it alone, it's like, think of the orange. God gave us the orange and all you had to do was squeeze it if you didn't want to eat it. But we sat down in the lab and we created something that tastes like orange, and we say, okay, fine, we're going to sell you that for very cheap. And the orange that you didn't have to do anything other than to pick it, that's natural. You're going to have to pay a premium for it. And so you see what organic is compared to, of course, what it is. As a matter of fact, they will tell you that this is orange drink versus orange juice. I think if everybody went back to farming, they would do themselves a great service. In summary, as far as the environment, you can see that whatever your senses have to deal with on a daily basis, that becomes part of your environment for this discussion. What you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch, all are part of your environment. Now, how do we enjoy the environment? By just sitting back and observing God's creation. It amazes me when I look at Genesis and look at what God called very good. When you go to Genesis 1 and you look at each day as he created, he says, and the Lord said, it is good. When you look at today and look at the environment around us, there are some people who like to be in the city. They call some cities the concrete jungle. Now, look at the difference between what man made and what God created. I think of my uncle who has since passed, but lived in the country in the islands. Never needed to go to the town or to buy things much. Why? Because he grew what he wanted to eat. He had his livestock, which at different times, of course, he would kill to eat. When you looked around, what you saw was mountains, valleys. There wasn't any cars, or not much cars there. There wasn't any fumes around. As a matter of fact, there was a time when there wasn't any light there. So the light was every morning, the sun comes up. At night, it goes down. He didn't have much bills coming in. And so there wasn't an anxiety of losing anything. Very simple. You think of it like, well, Little House on the Prairie was a little bit more modern than that. But you can just visualize, and yet still that's what God said was good. With the things that we currently have, the technology, the lights shining 24/7s, you see where that can make somebody depressed, anxious, can make people have to work, not to live so much. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. They work to sustain versus working to live, because they're never able to sit back and observe the environment. And so God created this environment for our benefit and to keep us healthy. Until next time, God bless.
just my